All right, everyone should see me. This is Chris. We're live on YouTube. This is our weekly wisdom webinar. I'm at one of our satellite offices. I'm at our Bloomfield Hills office today. And we always like to start with a positive focus, something positive that happened since we last talked. And my son, he tested very well for math moving into 7th grade. So he's going to be doing pre-algebra, just got his results back. And so that's pretty cool. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I guess another positive focus, I had a good continued education, is strictly on tax, and I'll share some of the tax stuff with you today. But as a CFP and certified law attorney, we have to do a lot of continued education to maintain our accreditation. And so just got back from a very good 2.5 days on taxes. And I'll share some of that. A lot of stuff we're already doing, but I just like the way that it kind of crystallized everything. And we do these workshops, webinars every week. So unless I'm traveling. And really the purpose of these are always to just answer whatever legal, financial, or tax questions that you have floating around in your head. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Otherwise, I have a question, kind of 2 questions that came in, and then just something else I was planning on talking about. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is general information. You want to see how it applies to your situation, feel free to just reply to the email and schedule some time on the calendar. All right, so first question that came in, Dad's old trust does not have a certificate of trust. And trying to sell the house, the real estate agent is asking for one and is saying the complete trust documents will not suffice. So realtors and banks, you hear all kinds of different things depending on who you talk to. But yeah, anytime you have a trust, typically you're going to have what's called a certificate of trust. So like a trust document, our trust, I don't know, let's say it's, I don't know how many pages, it's 55 pages. That's a private document. You don't have to share that with anyone. So one of the things that we do is what's called a certificate of trust, which is just 2 pages. And the certificate of trust lists out who the grantor is. So who's the person who created the trust, who's the trustee, who's in control of the trust, and gives the name of the trust. And depending on what the purpose is, there might be some other information. Now, if you're running into a roadblock with this real estate agent, we can easily prepare a certificate of trust. So if you get us a copy of Dad's trust, even an electronic copy, we can prepare a certificate of trust, and as an attorney, I can sign that certificate of trust for you. So it's super easy to get a certificate of trust. You could either reach out to the attorney that drafted the original trust, or we can do a new certificate of trust. Very easy to put together, much easier than trying to fight them about, no, you should take a whole trust, because they don't want to have to run it through their legal department to look for all this information. That's where the certificate of trust kind of makes it just super simple, where they see who the grantor is, they see the name of the trust, they see who's the trustee and who has the authority to make decisions with regards to real estate. So certificate of trust does make things a lot easier. Whenever someone passes away, a new certificate of trust has to be done, but it's super easy to set up. And if you're running into a roadblock, just reach out to us and ask us to prepare that for you. And actually, I'll follow up via email, because this question came in via email for the webinar today. But yeah, anytime you have a trust, typically you're going to have a certificate of trust. When there is a new successor trustee that steps in play, then we need to do a new certificate of trust. We can turn those around within 24 hours. So seems complicated, but pretty straightforward. We can get that taken care of. All right. Then that brings me to the next thing that if there's any questions on that, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A. Nope. Okay, cool. All right, sent out an email on this tax law change. So just a little bit of history on this. So the Secure Act was passed in 2020, or 2019, became effective January 1st, 2020. And we're doing workshops, in-person workshops. I remember doing these back when we did in-person workshops before the pandemic. And we're actually going to start getting back into in-person workshops, probably in April, educational workshops. But this was passed in 2020. And 2 big things that it did. First of all, it pushed back your required minimum distribution age So the age you have to start pulling money out of, like IRAs or 401ks, Vanguard needs just first and last page of the trust. So a comment here, getting back to the trust, is Vanguard just needs first and last page of the trust. Yeah, each institution kind of wants to see different things, especially when you're dealing with real estate. They want to see the powers of the trustee listed, and they want that included in the certificate of trust. So yeah, Vanguard might want just first and last page of the trust, but when you're dealing with real estate, they want to make sure the trustee has real estate powers. So thanks for that. Okay, so getting back to the Secure Act. So the Secure Act was passed in 2019, became effective January 1st. So the first thing it said is your required minimum distribution on your IRAs, individual retirement accounts, or things like 401ks, basically any type of qualified pre-tax money. Instead of it being 70 and a half, which it had been, now the RMD age is 72. So once you turn 72, now you're forced to take money out of these pre-tax accounts, whether you like it or not, instead of 70 and a half. But that's not the real reason the government passed the law. The real reason is they wanted to only allow a 10-year stretch out upon death. Meaning that if you inherit a 401k, you inherit an IRA, you inherit a 403b, you inherit a Roth, you have to, as a beneficiary, take it out of that type of account within 10 years. And if it's a pre-tax account, that means all the taxes have to be paid within 10 years. So when the Secure Act originally passed, so interpretation one of that, so again, there's like Congress and government passes laws, but then the IRS can interpret that, and they have these things called publications. So the first interpretation of that is, okay, let's say someone passes away and there's taxes due by year 10, at any point in here, you pay the tax. So all the tax could theoretically be paid in year 10 if you wanted to, which was different because previously when you inherited an IRA, you had to take RMDs. And then they flip-flopped, and there was a publication that came out, and I want to say this was April of 2020, that said, you know what, okay, yeah, we have the Secure Act that says all the taxes have to be paid within 10 years, but you're required to take out a RMD, required minimum distribution, every year based on your life expectancy. And then by year 10, you have to make sure you pay everything off. And then very shortly after that, they said, no, we made a mistake. That was just a holdover from the publication before. We forgot to change it. The way it works is how we originally said, is that, okay, just all the taxes have to be paid within 10 years. There's no RMDs. And then just last week, the IRS issued another publication saying, no, this is how we're going to do it now with the Secure Act, because it's already like 2 years after the Secure Act became effective. So you would think that we had this figured out. No, what they said is, okay, let's say the person who passed away is 72. Well, now if they are over age 72, then you're going to have to maintain whatever their RMDs are. And still by year 10, you have to pay all the taxes. Now, if it's a Roth, there's no taxes that have to be paid, but it has to come out within 10 years. So really in the big scheme of things, it doesn't change that much. It's just more of an accounting issue. And then it's just interesting seeing the IRS and government like flip-flopping 4 times for something that was already like made effective in 2020. So where we're at today is that if you have a loved one, and let's say they're over the age of 72, which means now they're taking out RMDs, and then they pass away, you still have to take out these RMDs, whatever their required minimum distribution would be. And then by year 10, all the taxes have to be paid. So you could take out more than the RMDs, but now there is this annual like accounting. You need to make sure you take out your RMD for these inherited IRAs and 401ks and stuff. So just a little detail that I thought it was crazy that we've flip-flopped on this 4 times within 2 years. Here's a question. What if the person who passed away is 87? less than 10 years, or the deceased RMDs next 3 or 4 years? Yeah, so the question is, let's say the person is 87, the same deal. Upon death, there's still going to be a 10-year window where all the taxes will have to be paid. But what's just going to happen is the RMD will be greater. Okay. And these are rough numbers, but at age 72, the RMD, if I remember correctly, you have to take out 3.65%. That might be off because it's adjusted for inflation. And there's an IRS table that has this. So at age 87, and this I'm completely making up what the number is, it might be 5.5%. So that means that, because what happens is each year from the age 70, there's a life expectancy table that the IRS puts out. And I forget what exactly it runs to. I want to say like 127 or 115, if I'm not mistaken. So by 115, all of your RMDs would be satisfied. And what happens is the older you are, the bigger that percentage you have to take out. So at age 72, let's say it's 3.5%, but at age 87, it would be 5.5%. So starting in year 1, 5.5% would have to be taken out. And then in year 2, it might be like 5.7%. And there's an IRS table that has all this. Versus at 72, it might be, or like 73, it might be 3.8%, 74, now you have to take out 4%. So that'd be the only difference. You still have that full 10-year spread. It's just that the required RMDs would be higher. And really, this should be less of an issue because most people think taxes are going up in the future. And so one of the things that we're having lots of conversations about is tax planning, because it's one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities right now. A couple of reasons. One is we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that runs from 2018 to 2025, where in 2025, your taxes are going up across the board about 3 to 4%. Then we have the Secure Act that says your kids are taxed, or your beneficiaries are taxed potentially more based on inheriting these IRAs. And then now we've crossed $30 trillion in debt. Prior to the pandemic, we're at $22 trillion in debt. And so tax planning is one of the things we're spending the most time talking to our clients about. Had a couple meetings even today with clients with multi-million-dollar IRAs, and we're talking about strategies to try to limit their tax exposure for their retirement and also what they leave as a legacy. And these are all different strategies. And this was part of the continuing education events that I attended that just kind of, and we've been doing these for our clients, but we just haven't really broken it into like, these are the kind of the core strategies. The first one is Roth conversions. So this is taking pre-tax money like IRA money, moving it to a Roth, which grows tax-free. So this is tax deferred, meaning whenever you pull money out of here, you're gonna have to pay the tax. And we know taxes are going up in the future. Roth money, this grows tax-free. Pretty straightforward. Most people are familiar with Roth conversions. But a lot of people get hung up on the difference between a conversion versus a contribution. There's no income limits on conversions. You can take $100,000 inside of your IRA, move that over to your Roth. Now you have $80,000 of Roth money if you wanted to. A more advanced strategy is taking your IRA money or 401k money, pre-tax money, paying the tax, and now moving it into cash value life insurance, typically index universal life. There's pros and cons to this, but really what we're trying to do, the nice thing about this is it's protected against downturns in the market. This could be more of a legacy play where you're leaving more to the next generation than say a Roth. Plus also we can build in some long-term care benefits. Similar concept though, we look at your tax return, see how much space there are in the tax brackets. And again, if you're at most of our clients in retirement are going to fall naturally in like the 22% tax bracket, which is going up to 25%. For majority of our clients, we'd recommend that you're at least getting up to the 24% tax bracket. And so the question is always first, how much to move, and then second, where to move it. Relatively new strategy, but this is something that's available, and we're talking to a client today about it, is what's called donor advised funds. So this is money and there's different strategies, but you could use this for like highly appreciated assets if you're charitably inclined, or and we kind of run into issues because of the standard deduction being so high right now. But if you're itemizing and you're donating to charity, what we could do is lump some of those charitable donations together all in one year, and then we could itemize to be able to write off donations to charity. So maybe we put $30,000 into a donor advised fund every 3 years or so. And then from there, you can decide which charities you want this to go to. And then that would lower your income tax by $30,000 because of the charitable contributions. Like today we had a client, hypothetical client, she's putting $100,000 into a donor advised fund, which is going to then lower her income for the year, which allows her to do more Roth conversions. And then each year she can then use this to use that money to go to her different charities that she supports or churches. So that'd be something that if you are charitably inclined and you're making donations to charity, but they're not showing up, or to churches or tithing, and it's not showing up on your tax return because you're just taking the standard deduction, or maybe we'd want to lump a lot of these charitable contributions together into a donor advised fund like every 3 years, so that every third year you can get a bigger reduction in your income taxes by using that donor advised fund. And then once you have RMDs coming on, whether it's 72 or maybe 70.5 if it's an inherited IRA, then you can look at qualified charitable distributions. So this is where, okay, your IRA or 401k, well, it actually has to be an IRA. This is another reason to roll over to an IRA. Your IRA is going to force you to take out these required minimum distributions like we talked about before. But if you don't need them and you're charitably inclined, well, let's send these directly to a charity. And now this reduces your income and you don't even have to worry about the standard deduction. It's just coming right off of, instead of that RMD of say 20,000, 30,000 or more showing up as income on your income tax return. If we send it directly to charity, it doesn't show up at all. So that might be a good strategy as well. And then a little more complicated, but this was something that came up in a conversation with a client today, even as we're talking about whether to do a donor advised fund or charitable remainder trust. A CRT or charitable remainder trust would be, okay, we're going to gift assets to the charitable remainder trust. The income can come back to you potentially tax-free that it generates, but then the principal upon death goes to a charity. So it reduces your income tax liability. And also we used to do a lot of these back in the past when there were estate tax issues. It also reduces your estate taxes. So those are just some of the kind of core tax planning strategies that are available. And these aren't like you only choose one. A lot of times these can work hand in hand. So a lot of times I have clients that they're doing Roth conversions and they're diversifying and they're also doing the IUL. Okay, that might run up their income. So then maybe we're also donating to a donor advised fund to then lower the income. So this is one of the areas where we can actually control things, like we know the rules. You don't know what the market's going to do. And market's been crazy. And we've had a lot of conversations as we've been in our spring reviews with our clients with that. No one can control what the market's going to do on a specific day. But understanding the tax rules, there's certain things that we can do to put ourselves in a much more advantageous position. And just I had we're planning a meeting with the clients, just doing like Roth conversions or looking at IUL, pulling money out of the pre-tax accounts. I was sitting down with a client and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax savings, depending on your situation. Where if we look at filling up these tax brackets, knowing that like your 22% tax bracket's going to 25 in the future, your 24 is going to 28 in the future, there's some amazing tax savings opportunities. Like I sat down with clients, we're just doing their legal work, or hypothetical clients, and he's kind of handling the tax piece on their own, and they're just maxing out the 22% tax bracket. I'm like, you realize in a couple of years when you're forced to take out RMDs, you're naturally going to fall in the 24% tax bracket, which is going up to 28%. So why don't we max out the 24% tax bracket now, pull money from these pre-tax accounts, and either stick it into Roth or stick it into IUL, so that if you don't allow this account to grow, so that when you turn 72, now you're forced to take out these RMDs that are going to jump you up to the 28% tax bracket. So it's all about looking at taxes not through a micro lens of minimizing taxes in one specific year, but minimizing taxes for your retirement and what you leave to the next generation. Question is, what will the 33% basically the tax brackets are going up about 3 to 4% across the board. And that's just due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's not taking into account that we're $30 trillion in debt. And how is the government going to cover this? Are they going to print more money? Well, inflation is out of control right now. So printing more money isn't a good idea. Neither side is cutting spending. So a lot of experts predict that taxes have to go up much higher than just repealing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So that's where we're spending a lot of our planning time, is looking at what are the different tax strategies for everyone's specific situation, because the markets are going to do what the market's going to do. And we invest in portfolios to try to protect and shield that as much as possible and control that, but understand whether the market's up or down tomorrow, that's outside of our control. This is something that we can control, is how do we use the tax code to our advantage? Let me see, a couple of questions came in here. Will taxes go up for the middle class 22 and 24%, respective of whether Democrats lose power? Yeah, so the way the current law is, this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it has a sunsetting provision that says it sunsets in 2025. And what that means is in 2025, across the board, marginal tax brackets are going up 3 to 5%, or 3 to 4%. Your 22% is going to 25, 28 is going to, or 24 is going to 28. 32, I think is going up. I have it, I can send it out. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but across the board, it's 3 to 4%. So that's regardless of who's in power. So assuming there's no changes to law, so we could have a change in power, but if they don't change the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, then that's what's going to happen. But again, we're before this was passed, we were only $22 trillion in debt, less than that. Now we're $30 trillion in debt. We have a pandemic plus like potential World War III. So taxes could go much higher in the future. And that's the big concern. Does it mean that with the new Secure Act, you still have to take RMDs from the Roth? You don't have to take RMDs, but you're going to have to take it all out within 10 years with the Roth. So yeah, all the money has to come out of that Roth within 10 years. Is there a formula that can be used to determine if there is a tax savings in converting an IRA or just leaving it the way it is? Is there a formula? Yeah, so typically what we do is we run the numbers for our clients, where we look at your tax bracket, we figure out the exact amount to move out of that IRA or 401k. And it's just looking at tax brackets. At the end of the day, tax planning comes, like with regards to Roth conversions and this type of thing, comes down to two things, like how much, and that's where we just look at your tax bracket and age and project kind of the future. And then two is where to put it. But there's a lot of, it's amazing. There's very smart people that have a lot of misconceptions with these. So, and I've done this before, but like some people say, well, I have to live a long time to make sure that this Roth conversion makes sense. But in reality, it doesn't. Like if taxes stay the same, it really doesn't matter. So let's say you have 100,000 inside of your Roth pre-tax account, 80,000 inside of the Roth, and let's assume a tax of 20%, just keep the numbers even. Well, we'd agree that 100,000 pre-tax is the same as 80,000 post-tax. So let's assume that they invest in the same thing. So both go up 10%. So they're both an XYZ mutual fund. So this goes up to 110,000, right? This goes to 88,000. Okay. And so the question is that the same amount? Well, we still have to pay tax on this because you're always going to have to pay tax. It's just a matter of when you're going to pay the tax. And so the tax on this would be 22,000. So if we subtract that out, you're left with 88,000. Now that's assuming taxes remain the same. Like this is the same number. Like doing a Roth conversion doesn't matter. So it's not like you have to wait 5 years for this to make sense, or this is really for the kids, not for me. There is no opportunity cost. Like, you're not growing a bigger number. What you're doing is you're growing a bigger tax bill for the government. So if taxes remain the same and you just continue to defer, all you're doing is growing a bigger tax bill. That's why the government wants you to defer. But we know taxes are going up, right? And so again, at the end of the day, if you want to put more money in your pocket, less money in the government's, explore Roth conversions. And this is something that we can help you do. It's as close to a no-brainer as you can say. I have not found one reason not to look at exploring this. I have clients doing up to the 24% tax bracket. In most cases, that's a no-brainer. I've had clients doing their whole IRAs in 1 year. That takes more analysis, but I thought a person was limited to how much they could put into a Roth. Nope. So again, this is where some of the misconceptions happen. So how do we get money in? So how do we get money into the Roth? And again, the Roth isn't necessarily the end all be all, but it's the easiest for people to understand. So how to get money into the Roth? Really, there's two main ways. One is a contribution, and this is where you're correct. There's limitations based on your income. There's limitations on amounts. It's going to be $6,000 to $7,000 per year per person, depending on your age. The other way, and this is what I'm talking about, is Roth contributions. There is no limit. Okay, we have clients doing $200,000 Roth conversions and greater, so there's no limit on that. You made it sound like a person could put any amount into the Roth. Yes. The only thing is a Roth contribution has to go from IRA to Roth. Okay, it can't be from like a taxable account. All right, answer that. Can I convert 401k funds to a Roth IRA while I'm still working? So no, and this is why I had this conversation with a client today. 401ks are very limiting in what you can do. What we'd have to do is do an in-service transfer to the IRA, and then from the IRA, we could do a Roth conversion. Now, your plan administrator may have a Roth option available that you can contribute to, but you can't go from a 401k to a Roth IRA. That's why we roll it over to an IRA. Small adjustments for Roth conversion calculators, higher Medicare premium and tax on investment income once income goes above. Yeah. So I'm not saying that it's all like rainbows. When we're doing this type of tax planning, specifically like Roth conversions, this is why some people get hung up at that 22% tax bracket. So the 22% tax bracket, you're not paying any additional Medicare premiums or any additional tax on investment income. But when you do get to 24%, you do. But I'm going to tell you that and I don't have it right in front of me, but this is about $170,000 for a married couple. This is actually 180, I think. And then this is about 340 for a married couple. So I don't have my key data sheet in front of me, but yeah, when you get into the 24% tax bracket, you're going to have some additional Medicare premiums, but they're going to drop back down. And then you're going to have some additional tax on investment income. But I'm going to tell you, and again, we've run the numbers many times on this all day, your tax savings long-term is going to far outweigh any additional Medicare premiums or additional tax because it triggers something else. And it's going to set up the rest of your retirement much more tax efficient. What if you put yourself into the 33 or 35% bracket when you do a Roth? How does it make sense then? Again, every situation is a little bit different, but the sweet spot for a lot of people, most people just kind of naturally fall into the 22% tax bracket. Well, we know 22 is going to 25% in the future. So let's go from 22 to 24. Like 12 to 22, that's an 87% jump. I'm not too super excited to do that. And then jumping from 24 to something higher, we just have to have a conversation about it. Make sure that we understand what we're getting into. So for example, I had some hypothetical clients last year They had about 3.7 million pre-tax, no pension. They hadn't claimed Social Security. We did a strategy to get all the IRA money out. And now for the rest of their retirement, they're going to be in a 0% tax bracket. So if taxes double, which isn't unheard of, taxes, highest marginal tax bracket has been higher than 60, 70% before. Taxes double, they don't have to worry about it. So it just gives them peace of mind to know that, like, if the government continues all this spending and stuff, they're always, for the rest of their retirement, going to be the lowest Medicare premium. They're not going to have to worry about additional taxes, et cetera. So it just gives them peace of mind where we're taking tax risk and legislative risk off the table for them. And that's what a lot of retirement planning is about, is taking away these risks. Like, you've accumulated a lot of wealth. What do we do to protect it? What are the things we're concerned about? Well, a lot of people are concerned about taxes. And so looking at tax strategies to minimize that risk is really what we're spending a lot of time doing these days. So, all right. All right. Any other last questions? That is all I had. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in. I will be traveling again next week. So we won't be meeting next week, but we'll meet the week after. So actually, every other week I have a continuing education event. So that's one of the downsides of doing legal, financial, and tax planning. We have a lot of continuing education that we got to keep up with. So, but that benefits my clients. So we're always having the newest and greatest strategies for you. Here's another, nope, let's see. There's another question that just came in. Open, sorry, here we go. Is it possible to avoid probate on bank brokerage accounts with POD and contingent beneficiaries? The answer is yes. So when someone passes away, there's 4 ways assets transfer: joint ownership, beneficiary designation, which would be TOD, POD, trust. But if it doesn't pass through one of the first 3 ways, then it ends up in probate. So we always want to try to avoid probate. That's why we always work on the beneficiary designations. Joint ownership is great for a married couple. Don't recommend naming anyone else joint on your accounts. Beneficiary designations work great. You're just giving it outright. It's avoiding probate. Could be a problem if you want to make sure the kids are protected from divorces, creditors, bankruptcies. That's where trusts sometimes come into play. One thing I didn't mention is a will. Will does not avoid probate. Will gives instructions to the probate court on how to administer your estate. So if you're looking at avoiding probate, you don't want to rely on a will, because that just gives instructions to the probate court. But to answer the question, yeah, if you have a brokerage account and you have payable on death or a transfer on death, or you've named a beneficiary, then that's going to avoid probate and go outright to your beneficiary. Thank you, Chris. You're very welcome. Yeah, it's great to be back. Again, here's another one. Inherited assets after marriage are not commingled with a spouse. Are they protected from the 50 division in case of beneficiary divorce? Yeah, so the issue is, okay, let's say parent passes away, son inherits it, keeps it in his name, and then son and daughter-in-law get divorced. Would the money that was inherited be protected? By law, the answer is yes, but what happens is that's a bargaining chip that's still going to be fought over as part of the divorce. And so that's where a lot of times, things end up getting commingled. And then B, by naming the trust as a beneficiary, it's not even a question. It's not even on the table. So it's not even an available asset. It's not even something that, okay, you have that money, so I should have this money. But yeah, by law, the default is that if the money that's inherited is not commingled, then it's going to remain with that individual. But that said, it's still on the table. It's still part of the divorce, versus if it's protected inside of a trust, it's not even part of the discussion. So, all right. With that, have a wonderful day. I'm very excited to watch my son. He has a band recital tonight with some of the high school kids. So he plays clarinet and he's in middle school. So he's pretty excited. So wish me luck with that and take care. Bye-bye. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Again, next week I'll be traveling, another continued ed, 2 weeks. And if you have questions on any of this, feel free to just email over those questions and we'll get them taken care of.